2954 or 2024, if you're stuck in the past, presentation is part of an ongoing series of academics for the members of the Aurora Republic, the premier role-playing organization in Star Citizen. If you're new to the Aurora Republic or visiting for the first time, let me start by saying welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Love to hear more from you. If you're interested in hearing more from us, we're a lawful good organization focused on role-play, exploration, and social interaction, and are currently active in recruiting on Spectrum and Gilded. All right, so tonight we're going over last of our basic aviation academics flip charts, which is mostly a role play item, but these things are actually functional if you care to use them. There's nothing in Star Citizen that forces you to them, but this is Basic Aviation 100 Hotel Flight Information Publications, all known as FLIP, and their procedures, which is part of our undergraduate pilot training to get your UPT cert, and we'll kind of whip through this. All right, so these are basically aeronautical charts as they have been modified by an air traffic controller who plays Star Citizen and has made an organization called Delta Consulting in Star Citizen, and they've actually produced these things. I've talked with them at length. We've done a few joint things together, helping them out, gathering data and all that kind of stuff. So these things are legit. They're full up. There are basically 4 different types. There's a landing zone chart, which is what looks at a landable area. So the actual part that you'd be trying to touch down in, where the buildings are at, where any obstructions are, all that kind of stuff. If someplace has a no-fly zone associated with it, like some of the cities in Star Citizen, then there's a no-fly zone chart would be a depiction of that. A terminal area chart is a larger depiction around the area, around one of those landing zones that has approach and departure corridors, so that you can kind of see where you should be flying in and out if you actually want to follow a procedure. And then if you actually needed to shoot an instrument approach, then those are known as IAPs for an instrument approach procedure. He has all 4 types are made where appropriate. And we'll show you some of the examples for those here in a moment. There is an indexing system. The most important part of the indexing system, and the only real reason you even know it exists, is that you can check if you do decide to use these, so that you can check that an individual approach plate or chart is the most current one. You can, whenever they put out a new patch, he spends quite a bit of time verifying all of the locations and all that sort of stuff. And if nothing has changed on a previous chart, then he does not publish a new version of that chart. He only publishes updates to charts that have had something that have changed on it. So the indexing system is a standardized system. It has some parts that are mandatory that'll be on all charts, and then some that are optional depending on what the chart type is and that sort of stuff. So as you can see with that template up top, chart type, system ID, and version are mandatory and will be on all charts down at the very bottom, and I'll show you where that's at in a sec. And the ones that are in the the more tan color, not yellow, facility ID, planet or moon, and page number are kind of only as necessary or as needed where it makes sense. So for example, I gave you 3 examples down there, one for terminal area chart, where it says the system ID for USTA for UEE system, STA being the 3-letter identifier for Stanton, BBG being the 3-letter identifier for New Babbage. The planet will be spelled out. The planet or moon's name will be spelled out, Microtech. Version 5, page 1, because of New Babbage, interstellar spaceport being so large that they've actually had to do multiple pages. Hicks Research Outpost out there on Cellin, landing zone chart. You can see USTA, Cellin, 2 Alpha Hotel is the 3-digit identifier for Hicks Research Outpost, and it's version 8. Notice there's no page number at the end because it doesn't need more than 1 page, et cetera, et cetera. And then if it was an instrument approach procedure, you can see the last one after the where it's at ArcCorp, then it would say the facility Riker, and then it would say the actual which approach it is. They're all QBA for quantum based approach is the instrument approach that he has come up with. Because obviously any real world approach systems don't exist in Star Citizen. So he's actually designed approach procedures based on the quantum drive system, the nav system, the nav HUD, and they actually work really well. I've flown several of these as a test form, and they actually work really well. So this would be QBA X, and they're typically lettered starting at X. So it's like X, Y, Z if there were 3 different approaches into a place. Okay, so the facility identifiers I already alluded to. They are a 3-digit identifier for the location. If it is a major landing zone, then it'll be 3 letters and it'll be based on their names. Obviously, like BBG for New Babbage, LOR for TISA Spaceport at Lorville, ORI for August Unlow at Orison, and RIK for Riker Memorial at Area 18. If they are a space station, then they will have 2 digits and a letter. So like 22 Sierra for Seraphim Station, 40 Tango for Port Tressler out there. The first digit will be which planet that they are orbiting. So like, Crusader is Stanton 2, so that first digit's going to be a 2. Microtech is Stanton 4, so the first digit would be a 4. He made a standard that said Leo stations have the second digit as 0. And then when they removed Port Olisar, which was 2020 Oscar, and put in Seraphim Station, for some reason he named it 22 Sierra, therefore violating his own system that he came up with and published. I brought it up to him and he went, oh, whoops. So he might be changing that one to 20 Sierra, which would stay in line with the system that he's adapted. So anyway, for now, 22 Sierra is what you'll see in the current iteration of charts. Hopefully maybe after 3.23 comes out and it'd take him like a week or so to get the updates to the charts out. Hopefully he'll change it to 20 Sierra, I'm hoping. Anyway, anything that's down on a planet that's not one of those will go first digit being the planet number, and then the second and third will be letters, meaning it's something else that's not a major landing zone. It's not a space station. So like 2 Alpha 1 would be Ashburn Channel on Cellin, because it's the 2 Alpha is Stanton 2 is Crusader, Stanton 2 Alpha is Cellin, the moon of Crusader, and then the aid stations just end in a number. Everything else will go number, digit, again based on the name and what they are. So for example, 1 Hotel Echo and 1 Sierra Sierra would be on Hurston, H for an HD MS, S for an HD SF, and then E for Edmund and S for Sherman. The star system identifiers similarly also have a 3-digit, but they could have a 4-digit. The first digit being on a 4-digit identifier being what system owns them, such as it'll start with a U pretty much on everything that we're ever going to fly in because it's a UEE system. So you could be truncate that to just the 3-digit identifier. So STA for Stanton, or it could be USTA for a UEE system, STA for Stanton. So you can write it either way, and it should work just the same. So there's those others as like Seraphim Station would be USTA 22 Sierra or just STA 22 Sierra. As a shorthand for a system and facility. Here on the right is all of the 3-digit or 3-letter identifiers for all of the systems that they have planned and have acknowledged and let us know about. So there may be more. Remember, in the Kickstarter, they came up with 100 systems. If you count here, there's not 100 names. I think there's 60. And so, which means that there's a lot more systems out there. There's like 40 more systems that they have planned just to meet their Kickstarter goal. Like I said, if you're going to use the 4-digit, then the first letter is U if it's a UEE system, D if it's a developing system, or Z if it's unclaimed. We don't know if that's going to also extend to the Banu, Xion, and Vandul systems, if those are going to also have a 4th-digit preamble or prefix. Spaceship categories are based on the landing pad size / hangar size that they go into. Yes, they've said in 3.23 there's some changes going on. Not only are the I think it was the medium and large, or was it the large and capital ship size hangars are themselves, the hangars are getting grown in size by like 20 or 30% respectively. Then there's also, they're reshuffling the categorization of the ships in the game, and some things that were like categorized as small are going to move into the like medium category so that they will get bigger hangars when they go someplace. I think the C1 was specifically mentioned amongst other things, so that some people aren't having to use Crisco and a shoehorn to try to get their ship into some of these hangars. Okay, so some of these examples, I'm going to walk you through the template for the different areas because they're set out in a very standardized way. And then we'll show you examples of kind of all four of those situations. So this is your typical landing zone chart. The very top up at the title block at the top not only has the name of the location over on the right, here it says Calhoun Pass Aid Shelter, and in parentheses it'll have its 3-digit facility ID. For Papa 1, it'll tell you where it's at. Over on the left, you have a data block up there that shows TOA for top of atmosphere. So if you fly up out of Microtech, your altimeter should stop reading at 100,000 and disappear because that's where you're going to exit the atmosphere. QTA is the quantum travel altitude. That's the altitude that you have to get up to before your quantum travel system will stop flashing exit atmosphere at you and tell you that you have to go. In that block, the left-hand one, that 5 with the diamond, tells you what the closest orbital marker is to this location. It gives it its Latin long on the planet, what gravity measured against 1g, against 1 times Earth gravity, what the temperatures are. If the temperatures are a negative number, they do not put negatives because they use the negative sign as a dash, so that doesn't mean negative. So they put M if it's a minus. So in this here where it says temperature M90-13, that means minus 90 to positive 13 degrees. And I believe that's in centigrade. And it'll show you if it has atmosphere and breathable atmosphere and pressure. The next block underneath it is all the facility information. It'll tell you things like what this is, what services are there, do they have hangars, pads, vehicle pads, and it'll also have any landing zone notes such as like what the terrain is around there, where maybe some suggested landing areas, any known obstacles, any other warnings like possible known weather conditions and stuff like that frequent the place. The next block under that is your what we call the ATC block. It shows you first block on the left is how many landing pads and or hangars they have and of what size, what elevation, if that's applicable, because obviously in at space stations, elevation doesn't mean anything. The center block is what the name of the air traffic control agency is. Then the right 4 blocks is the standard information about whether it has an armistice on and whether or not you have fuel, repair, or rearming services available. The big block in the center is basically a map looking down God's eye view, and it is laid out to scale within the drawn map area. In one of the either upper right or upper left corner, there will be what we call the postage stamp that'll have the compass rose in it, and it'll show you where north is. Remember, north is defined in this game by OM1, or I should say the other way around. OM1 is always placed over the north pole of the planet or moon. And then the other part of the arrow, the dark arrow, will show the direction to that same nearest OM, along with a distance and a pitch elevation and a heading on the heading system now that we have heading. Somewhere on the bottom left or right, there will be another postage stamp that'll have something that says MSA. MSA stands for minimum safe altitude. So if you are flying blind and can't see outside to see the ground, but you can obviously have instruments, then what the MSA tells you is out to 10 kilometers around this facility, it'll tell you what the minimum safe altitude is. If you get up to that altitude, then there is no obstruction within 10 kilometers that you could run into with the spacecraft. So 1602 on the clock means you're going to be at least 100 meters above the highest obstacle within that 10 kilometer area. Within the map itself, you'll see that the buildings will be dark black, and it'll be a silhouette of the shape. Any obstructions in and around that are man-made will be this vertical pyramid with a dot in it, and it'll have the altimeter readout for the top of that obstacle. So even though it's printed at the bottom of the symbol, the top of that obstacle is 1030, for example, if it's the two that are north of the aid shelter there as depicted. and the dot in the center is the actual exact location in reference to the building around it. If, because of drawing space, the symbol cannot be put right on its actual location without occluding something else, then they will put the symbol off a little ways with an arrow pointing to where it's actually at. So that one that looks like it's south of the building that says 1039, and it has an arrow saying that that obstacle is actually right there, right on that southwestern corner of the building. So be aware of that. If there are vegetation like trees that are in there, you'll see them look like those little bush symbols that are spread out, and those should be spread out somewhat accurately to where they are. If it is like a rock, like a boulder, it'll look like the asteroid to directly west of that building as depicted there. And then if it's anything that's like terrain, you'll see just beside the MSA postage stamp, you'll see the two vertical mountains symbols with the 1088 altitude for that big plateau that's right there south of the shelter at Calhoun Pass. We've all been to Calhoun Pass, which is why I picked this one to make it the examples, because everybody should be fairly familiar with it, considering the number of org events that we've done out there. Down at the very bottom there, bottom center, you will see that chart index code that I showed you. So this LZC, this is a landing zone chart, USTA, so UEE owned Stanton system, Microtech for Papa 1, and this is version 7, as you can see there. Okay, so just last couple of examples to show you some of the other stuff, some versions of these that you can run into. Space stations are slightly different because they don't have terrain around them. They're up in space, so it would look like this. This is the one that for Port Tressler, 40 Tango. And you'll notice that they did give, because of the layout of the station, having those pads around those arms that are underneath the that bisected donut disc up on top. They actually decided to show that in two pieces in the map area, so that it would be more clear and easier to see how things are laid out. And notice, instead of obviously having the compass rose with the closest OM and where north is, that doesn't mean anything to a space station. They did give you a reference of like, this is the direction of this is the side of the station that's pointing towards the planet, and that way you can use that as a reference direction. Other than that, it works exactly the same as any other landing zone chart that you see up there, which I think is really a tip of the hat to the guys at Delta Consulting Aviation Products for having this so well standardized. Here's a terminal area chart around New Babbage. And let me see, I'm going to grab my magic laser pointer. Okay, it's laid out very similarly, except for that a lot of the data blocks are now underneath the map block. But other than that, it all pretty much works the same. So you can see the landing area here, and you can see that they have various this sort of the standard approach directions depending on where you're coming. So if you're coming from OM4 and you quantum travel in, that typically brings you in along this vector, and they put in data along that arrow line showing you that when you come out of that spline jump, you'll be at 13,500 meters of altitude, 25.6 kilometers away, and you'll be about 35 degrees nose down for one. Similar coming in from OM5, coming in from Port Tressler, and then those are the dark black arrows showing this sort of the standard arrivals, and they'll give them names so you can actually just call out on the radio, sort of in a Unicom style of like, this is Killer One, a downtown arrival for New Babbage. And anybody who's familiar with this will go, okay, they're somewhere over here. So as people are flying in and around here, they'll know to look for you over there. The Rink arrival, the Peaks arrival this way. These lighter gray arrows are showing you departure corridors. You can see how there could be some potential conflicts, but if you actually read down into the description block beneath the map, you will see verbiage. You'll see prose describing each of these departures and or arrival procedures. You'll notice that there are marked points that will have a 5-letter identifier, such as Aspire and Tracks. Those are known points that, like you said, you could just say, you know, Killer Ones over Aspire or Killer Ones over Tracks. And people who know that this exists should know exactly where you're at without you having to say it. And then you can read these arrival procedures. You can read the paragraph that applies, you know, that says for downtown arrival, for peaks arrival, for rink arrival. If you read those things out, they will be a verbal or they will be a description in prose of what you're seeing graphically up here, and they should match. Okay, again, this is a terminal area chart, which is what you'd be looking at when you're doing your approach. Okay. If you have a no-fly zone chart, it would look like this. You can see that it should have known ground references or aeronautical references plotted on it as well. So you can go, okay, you know, if I'm looking on, if I look at this and this, that, you know, they should jive between each other. And so you can kind of mentally plot where these arrivals and departures are. But a no zone chart will basically be a photograph, and it'll have the boxes with the minimum altitude you need to be at to not be in that box, not to violate that chart, that no-fly zone space. I'm trying to see. So as you can see, these no-fly zones that are over New Babbage are very, very low. That's why we hardly ever run into them. But yeah, if you do go over to this area and go down below 910, which is almost down into the ground anyway, then yeah, you can expect your autopilot to take over and you to be forcibly flown up and away from that box. Okay, landing zone chart for New Babbage. You can see that they can get complicated with multiple pages if it is a very busy place with a whole lot of stuff, like New Babbage is the biggest one, with lots of hangars all over the place, including some that are some of these towers that people don't necessarily mentally associate with being part of the spaceport actually are. There actually are big hangars in there, which means that the spaceport is actually dug way back into this mountain. So you can get, they may do multiple pages, would be a typical technique for them to be able to get multiple views and zoomed in views and everything to make the information available as uncluttered and easy to see and read as you can. Those are the times where you're going to be looking for that extra digit at the end of the index, the chart index at the bottom, because there, you know, could be a page, there's a page 1 and a page 2 for New Babbage. You know, theoretically you could have even more if the spaceport was, or the landing zone was sufficiently complicated enough. And you can even have them for places that aren't necessarily an aerospace, an aviation facility. So, the commons at New Babbage have a landing zone chart associated with it, just because it gets used so much for people to just go over and land and get in and out fast, even though it's technically not a an aviation facility. So these techniques can be applied and charted for people's use so that you know where you're going before you get there. Right now, because we've been in the Stanton system for 10 years and nowhere else yet, everybody knows every place by the back of their hand. So are these really necessary? No, not yet. But if Star Citizen actually is built to the scale of what Chris Roberts pitched, with 100 star systems out there, there's a very good chance you could be flying into a star system that is populated, that is lawful, and you know, people would expect you to know how to get in and out of there, that you've never been there before. So these charts could actually become very, 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 very helpful in the future. And if you're a role player, like we all portend to be in this org, us being touting ourselves as the premier role-playing organization in Star Citizen, then this is a great way to actually get your role play on and pretend you're actually flying real aviation in space, the way it was originally pitched, and not some of this arcadey bullshit that they seem to be trying to turn it. All right. That wraps up this installment of Academics with Foghorn. Hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you have any questions I didn't answer, please feel free to contact me via email, Gilded Spectrum, or of course, comment section below. If you're watching this later, I'll answer to the best of my ability, and as soon as I see it, I'll see you next time. Foghorn signing off, wishing you a very pleasant remainder of your afternoon, morning, and or evening, and thank you so very much for watching.